So I thought it was fitting that Eric affirmed the choice to begin this morning's day of many wonderful presentations, exploring for just a few moments this issue of what is integrity in our lives. What does it mean to be a person of moral character? Why is this so relevant to Buddhism? Of course it is. What does it mean in our lives today? In a world where the kind of violence that unfolded yesterday happens, where young people are exposed and traumatized. How is this touching generations to come? Recently, I was with the epigeneticist Perla Kalaman in a program at Upaya, and her work is extraordinary. And she's in her research on gene expression, the trauma that people experience, whether it's in the camps, as was reflected by the work that Glassman Roshi did in his plunges at Auschwitz, or whether it's the people who have survived that shooting in Virginia Beach, the trauma, or whether it's the thousands, tens of thousands, millions, almost 7 million refugees fleeing from climate catastrophe and from war. The trauma, and most of them children, the trauma that they carry today will be transmitted through generations. And we're not talking about just one generation, multiple generations, according to Dr. Kalaman. So our responsibility to understand integrity is, I feel, really important, not just in terms of the realization of a life that you and I can live in a principled way, in a really loving and caring way, but also what is being transmitted into the future, not just in terms of history, but historical trauma. And how can we actually create the conditions where we dial down violence in our lives, in our minds, in the heart, and also in the social platforms that influence so much of the thinking of today and so much of the behavior. And it's really a fascinating time to be alive, because we see that violence is being, and it's indirect, but it's also direct. It's a reflection of direct, but it's indirect through social media. That violence is being transmitted, at a global level. Even I work in the Himalayas with our Upaya's Nomads Clinic, going to these very remote, high-altitude villages in these communities that have no access to health care. But the satellites are beaming down into those communities, and everybody has a digital device. And I mean, the rapidity of the change in our social and psychological environments as a result of the access to this content that all of us are exposed to, that is being driven by corporate interests and political interests around power and patriarchy and colonialism and racism, is really extraordinary. We live in an extraordinary time. And as such, we have the opportunity to use these platforms of communication to, as well as the platform of our own attention, to transform the conditions that are right now in a phase in our world that are very, very problematic, if not extraordinarily dangerous. So I finished this book, Standing at the Edge, Finding Freedom Where Fear and Courage Meet. And it was actually, I wanted to write a book about compassion. And they've already done that. Mathieu has done it and Jimpa's done it. So, we don't need another book on compassion. And I'm like, okay. Thanks a lot. So I thought that was, kind of wonderful. Even though I was kind of disappointed, when you're kind of writing a book, I don't know who's here's written a book, but it's not the most fun thing in the world. You're sitting there, with a great eye hunch, pecking away at your computer, and this thing is sort of inhabiting your, midbrain for years. And then finally it comes out and you find the spelling errors in the published edition, and you think, "Oy," but never mind. So, and I'm not even Jewish, but I'm aligned. So, and Sylvia, you've ruined my morning, so to speak. My old friend Sylvia Borstein sat down next to me, and I was immediately influenced by her good heart. Anyway, they said, we want you to write a book about edge states. We've heard that you talk about this. Well, it's a term I invented. And actually it came out of, we all value altruism, for example. I mean, if your mother and father, no matter how difficult they were, how fraught they were, if they weren't fundamentally altruistic somewhere, you wouldn't be here, if you know what I'm saying. So, it's just a dollop of altruism can go a long way, and here you are. So altruism is important. It's an essential human virtue. And I've been, I'm on Facebook, and I always feel touched. I see, the turtle on his back, and the other turtle coming and kind of pushing the turtle over, and I see the elephants helping the baby elephant. I have to lift up my spirits with something, including meditation, but nonetheless. So anyway, I've been in this end-of-life care field and working in various ways, like 6 years as a volunteer in death row and maximum security at I almost said the University of New Mexico, but actually it was the penitentiary of New Mexico. I think I've been traveling too much. I said to dial down my carbon footprint. So in any case, and then, working in the Himalayas. And then I have to tell you, starting a Buddhist center was the worst mistake I ever made, in the sense that I know Sylvia understands this as well, because you're just sitting in this kind of vat of suffering, because people come to meditation, hopefully not just to date, but also to become familiar with their own minds and the content of their minds, and to transform their suffering. And, it's interesting. People come to you and say, wow, the people here. And I say, yeah, they recognize the truth of suffering. That's why they're here. That's why you're here. You recognize the truth of suffering. You could be doing something else in Los Angeles. So in any case, back to edge states, they asked me to do this book. And I realized that sitting in the interview room now, thousands of people, and working in the healthcare field as I have since 1970, it just was really clear to me. People, for the most part, and it's miraculous, really want to do their best for others. I mean, and it's like Paul Hawkins' book, Blessed Unrest. It's so inspiring to know that there are all these small movements all over the world. And it's not just the West. And I'm talking about it in Thailand and in Indonesia. I mean, I was just at a small environmental conference of scientists and faith leaders, actually day before yesterday. This incredible Muslim man who is protecting tigers in Indonesia. I mean, his whole life is dedicated to creating the policies, but also the context where tigers can be protected. So, you realize there's all over the world, there's these movements and these individuals who are deeply dedicated to the well-being of all species. And yet, even in that conference, this small meeting that I was at, which had a huge footprint. I mean, people came from all over the world, but it was 40 of us exploring deeply this issue. At least half, if not more, were people who were burned out, just exhausted, just done, cooked, fried, crisp. And so the thing that I have learned in working in human rights organizations and with environmentalists and in the healthcare field and corrections and so forth is that the most cherished virtues that we can actualize or that are actualized in our lives can also manifest as deep challenges and have extraordinary shadows. And as a result of that, I developed this notion of edge states. And an edge state is a human virtue, like altruism, or a behavior like empathy, or respect, or integrity, or engagement. These are aspects of our nature, of our character, that are really essential for us in order for us to be in the world in a way where we don't feel morally compromised. By the same token, altruism can flip into pathological altruism when we ourselves are harmed psychologically, socially, spiritually, economically, or physically by our endeavors to be of service to others. And yet that boundary is very undifferentiated as well, the boundary between healthy altruism and pathological altruism. Also, empathy is essential. A world without empathy, without us being in resonance with each other, in connection with each other, sensing, being able to expand our subjectivity to include the experience of others physically, emotionally, or cognitively. It's essential that we have that capacity, or the world is dead to us. A world without empathy is where we are dead to each other. And yet, if empathy is not regulated either spontaneously or through intention, we can experience empathic distress, go over the edge of empathy, that's why I call it an edge state, and find ourselves suffering from secondary trauma. Integrity. What is it to be morally upstanding? Not self-righteous, not stinky, if you will, prideful around integrity, but to understand and I defined integrity as living a life where we dial down our harm toward other beings and ourselves. And integrity is violated when we cause harm. And yet, when our integrity is not deeply embedded and instantiated in our values, and our values is not connected to a view that is characterized by radical inclusivity, then our integrity is compromised. And what happens when our integrity is compromised? Moral suffering. And I'm going to address that in a little more detail shortly. moral suffering. And respect. How do we uphold others, even the politicians? And I'm having a hard time doing that. I have to tell you, it's like, oh my God. I remember, Buddhists aren't supposed to be political. Well, if you're not political, let me just tell you, you got a problem. So I remember during the former, Republican administration, I wasn't real fond of our world leader at that point, but I was particularly not fond of his second in command. And in fact, I have to tell you, a couple of months ago, when Vice came out, I've never been to the movies alone in my life, but I actually got in my car on a snowy morning, late morning, and went to Violet Crown in Santa Fe, where I live, and went in and sat in the back of the theater and watched Vice, and I just sat there like, oh my God, I'm Christian Bale. Was that who was the guy? Okay. He killed it. He, in more ways than one. So I during the Bush administration, used our vice president as the person I practiced with internally. I sent him so much metta. It didn't help, but anyway, it helped me. I learned a lot. I practiced Tonglen with him. I could not, objectifying him, imagine what it would be like to be in that state of mind. And I just took it in and tried to allow it to dissipate into the vastness of my boundless heart and sent him, healing. Well, I have many excellent subjects to practice that with today, including Erdogan, Kim Jong-un, and the current, anyway. So respect is essential because I make jokes. I'm kind of a serious, slightly heavy person. My heaviness partially comes out of the grief I feel for the world today, and the feeling of a kind of imperative. And you could see it in Bernie's eyes. Bernie's eyes are so you could see so. That photograph, Peter's photograph last night, those of you who are here, so kind of tender, vulnerable, strong, and also determined. I feel so lucky to have had 20 years of coming alongside, writing alongside Bernie. Yeah, Roshi Bernie. And we laugh. We have to laugh. And Bernie had this wonderful kind of sense of irony and everything. But I think it forgot, who was it who said, Bernie didn't disparage others. He saw the irony and the kind of tragic humor of things. And he often was just an incredible, he fooled around like crazy in the best sense of fooling around. He was very fun. He was a clown, but he was also deeply aware. There's a term in Japanese, mono no ware, which means the slender sadness. He was aware of this kind of tragic aspect of existence. And Thich Nhat Hanh, in his poem, I put my face in my two hands. You also felt that same spirit in Thai. Also the Dalai Lama, also Mother Teresa, also Jane Goodall, also Malala, also Emma Gonzalez. So respect is essential because we are all human beings. and even bigger than that, respect for all species. But since our main concern right now in terms of what is causing the greatest harm, which is not a meteor from outer space, but the sixth extinction we're facing right now that is caused by humans in this Anthropocene. So our understanding that even when I was in the penitentiary of New Mexico working on death row, with men who had caused horrible suffering, all of whom who had killed people from little girls on up to their parents. And but also realizing this is a human being here in front of me. Recognizing the basicness of our humanity, no matter how deluded we are, but to actualize that vision that this is a human being, this is a life. This one, whether it was Hitler or Mussolini or Erdogan or Assad, was a baby, and this one will die. And in my book, I don't name the vice president, but, I say something like, I'm not sure I'd want to go to a dinner party with him. But if he were actively dying and I were asked to come sit by his side, I would go. I would go. I'm sure you would too. I'm sure you would too. Respect. Not for a person's actions, but for the fact that they are a human being, a human life. And one wishes the best. I wish the best for our president every single day, even though I'm just horrified by what is happening. I cannot just take refuge in emptiness. I have to look at the truth of suffering with unveiled eyes. And then engagement was the fifth edge state that I describe in this book, Standing at the Edge. And it is important that we feel wholehearted, deeply committed to whatever we do, whether it's, it's like I'm a little concerned, well, never mind, that we care, that the work that we do, whether it's the daily activities of our life, like waking up in a hotel in Los Angeles and making up the bed, or picking the towel up off the floor, or putting the sign outside the door so that, the person who's undoubtedly come from another country and might be here illegally doesn't have to make up another room or wash more towels and sheets. There's these small acts that are part of our life. Yes, the big projects are important, dealing with issues related to policy, but it is in the granular detail of our everyday lives that our values shine. That is where our lived experience makes a true difference in these granularities. But when we work in toxic institutions and we don't have the resilience to sustain and transform that toxicity, or when we have ambition driving us, it's like I taught recently at Google and at Apple, and it was like, oh, do these people ever sleep or eat? Wow. And young people and wonderful people. In fact, I really enjoyed my time at Google a lot. But there's some kind of driven ambition in these settings that is being transmitted through the social platforms, the ecologies that are transmitted through the media that is infecting children everywhere. And burnout is the shadow side of engagement. I think Celia Borstein, who's my friend and over there, or one of the women Buddhist teachers, is maybe it was another one, but anyway, I remember she, I vow not to burn out. That's really wonderful. And what I discovered in exploring these edge states is that the one lever, if you will, for transforming these toxic states that we can fall into even as we try to do our best is the miracle of compassion. And I'm not speaking about empathy. I'm speaking specifically to compassion. Compassion, which is made of non-compassion elements, including our capacity to be attentionally balanced, emotionally balanced, to have an intention which is fundamentally unselfish, to bring insight into the equation that primes compassion and embodiment and engagement. Now, I want to return for a moment to integrity. And I think I have 3 minutes, right? Okay, I have 6 minutes. Since this was about integrity, but I just wanted to give you the ecology of edge states a little bit. I hope that's okay. You can read the book. I'm not going to write it again. So I began to look at moral suffering, and I discovered there are 4 interdependent ecologies that operate in moral suffering. And they include moral distress. And that is when you and I see a pathway through when we're confronted with a moral dilemma, but we can't actualize it because of institutional values, social values, choices of those whom we're working with, and so forth. And as a result of that, we are deeply distressed because we see the contours of suffering before us. We see the potential outcomes, but we are helpless in the face of suffering. The second ecology that I identified in this category of when integrity is violated is moral injury. And moral injury is rampant in the military. In fact, it is probably one of the leading causes of suicide among those who have served in our military establishment. It is also present in corrections. It is present in education. It is present in medicine. And that is when we witness or engage in actions that violate our moral principles, perhaps under orders, perhaps because of the ethos of the institutions that we're serving in, like the ethos of our country. For example, I believe that all of us in the West are suffering shame and self-blame, leading to national moral injury around issues related to violence toward others, whether it's racism or war, or whether it's environmental degradation that we're contributing to. I believe that if we were to live 100 years, not a chance for me, but who knows how biotechnology is going to be in the future, extending lives, that we will look back at this time with shame, We will think, what have I done? Just as Ashoka asked that question of himself when he destroyed Kalinga, when he wrought war havoc in the kingdom of Kalinga. What have we done? What have I done? The sense of self-blame and shame. The third geography of moral suffering, which I identified as moral outrage. I love the sort of dialed down expression, but she's so brilliant. Rebecca Solnit says, one of the ways that we convey moral outrage is recreational bitterness. That is, it's polarizing even within the same movement. It just becomes stylish to be morally outraged. It's Sanders versus AOC, if you know what I'm saying, tearing apart even that party which we feel in support of. Recreational bitterness. Or sitting at home and just dissing this thing and that thing as we watch these issues present themselves through our social media or in our interactions around in our family systems. Moral outrage, which is a combination of anger and disgust, where threats to our survival, our values, are in our face, and we respond through shaming and blaming. And the final geography, and I'm sure there are more, but anyway, that I identified is moral apathy. And I hadn't thought about it until I went to see the James Baldwin, film about James Baldwin, I'm Not Your Negro. And there, Baldwin used the term moral apathy. The bubble of privilege that we all live in who are in this space, no matter who we are and what kind of mess up we're in. The unconscious biases that operate in our lives. The addictions that have consumed our attention and make it impossible for us to discern deeply the truth of suffering, including our addiction to work. Moral apathy. Again, time is up, I know. Again, the key to, I believe, transforming the experience of moral suffering in our time is to actively cultivate those qualities associated with compassion. A compassion that is healthy, principled, brilliant, unselfish, unsentimental, and is characterized by deep discernment and boundless love. I think that is what integrity is about. So thank you.